All right, live on Facebook, live on YouTube. Welcome in, guys. Another Tuesday night. A little bit later, getting on the air tonight. We had players wrapping up and talking to them, finishing up a story. Just published it on Dog Nation. You can read it either there or on the app. We talked to some defensive players tonight: Nakobe Dean, Aziz Ojolari, and talked to Kirby Smart earlier in the day as well. Sort of talking about them rehashing the Alabama game, looking ahead to Kentucky, the bye week, the rest of the season, really. It's not quite the midpoint, but sort of where we are. Jamal Major, good to see you. Welcome in. Bobby Jones, Bob Page. Welcome, guys. Good to see you. Good to hear from you. Tony Henry from Ringwald, good to see you. We got Vidalia in here. We got all of Georgia represented. Yeah, Jacob Thompson. The hair gets bigger and bigger every week. I don't think I haven't officially cut it since May, and I haven't gotten a real haircut since, I guess, the NFL Combine. So that's almost 8 months now. So we're just growing it out. We're seeing where it's going. Dante Green, good to see you guys. Karen Moses, welcome in. Keith Folds, good to see you. Hope everyone's doing all right. It's another Tuesday night, making it through the week. Tuesday is easily the worst day of the week, so we can end it on a good note here. We're into Wednesday. That's hump day. Week's half over at that point, and from there, you're just cruising on into the weekend. So hope everyone had a good weekend. I know, well, if you're a Georgia sports fan, you did not have a very good weekend, whether you rooted for Georgia, the Braves, or even the Falcons, who you were probably hoping for a loss against Minnesota, and they come out and play their best game of the season because that's just how the Falcons tend to do. So we'll talk a little bit about, obviously the Alabama game. I think pretty clearly the quarterback battle because that's what's going on. And then we'll look ahead, Kentucky, Florida, two tricky games coming up, games I think Georgia should win, but they're not going to be gimmies. Georgia's going to have to correct some things, fix some things, and sort of figure out what this team is going to be. So we can touch on recruiting, whatever else you guys want to talk about tonight. So we will start with the game on Saturday and sort of see where things go and sort of see what you guys want to do with it. I have a feeling it's going to be a lot of quarterback questions because for me, that's sort of where this game starts and ends. I think the difference in the game was Mac Jones was excellent. He put the ball where his receivers could make a play on it consistently throughout the night. And when you have guys like Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith who are able to do that and win consistently, it's going to score you a lot of points, as it did against Georgia. Conversely, I think in the second half, Stetson Bennett did not have his best game. The ball is getting batted down at the line of scrimmage. I think that's a fixable, correctable thing. Kirby Smart talked about that today, where it's really just he's got to know to step up in the pocket and have a better pocket presence around him so that he can know, okay, I've got guys there who can potentially get their hands up. And John Stinchcomb on Dog Nation Daily on Monday mentioned I think the offensive line can help a little bit too. Even from my days, you're taught, hey, if a defensive lineman's putting his hand up and jumping up in there to try to deflect the ball, John said you hit him in the chest. I sort of go a little bit lower in the stomach gut area to sort of make him fold in half. But there are some things there that you can fix. The concern was the interceptions, because that's something where I think if you follow this Georgia team closely, he had gotten, I will say, a little bit lucky with some throws that probably should have been picked and weren't in the Tennessee and the Auburn games. And he didn't get that same kind of luck on Saturday. And I think eventually this stuff all evens out over the course of a season. And you saw that where first interception, ball gets batted at the line of scrimmage and falls right into an Alabama defender. Second interception, ball goes off Jermaine Burton's hands. But that was I'm not totally putting that on Jermaine there. That was going to be a tough catch, and he had a guy all over him, and the ball sort of just ricochets off Burton's hands and right into the hands of an Alabama defender. And then the third one is just I mean, Bennett said it himself. It was just not good. And I joke with one of my friends, you go back and watch the replay of it. You don't even know who he's throwing to because there's just nobody in the area there. So there were some good things that I think Stetson that game, the touchdown pass to James Cook. They did take away Kyrus Jackson. I think Alabama very much made that a point. And you saw Jermaine Burton emerge a little bit. But ultimately, this Georgia the reason I think Georgia lost this game is because Stetson turnovers started mounting in the second half, with two of them, the first one on the opening possession and then the Jermaine Burton interception. Those were both scoring opportunities where Georgia was on the plus side, was on Alabama's side of the field, and that ended drives. And I think the Jermaine Burton one, that play, and then the pass interference call, which questionable. Yeah, I know a lot of people aren't happy with it. When you sort of play defensive back the way Georgia does, you're going to get away with that a lot of times. But when you are that grabby and physical with wide receivers, sometimes that's just the risk you want to run into. And unfortunately, Georgia there, I think, got a little burnt. Hopefully the refs in the future decide to let the game actually be decided on the field. And because you can even make a case on the Burton interception, he was being interfered with to a degree. So, I didn't love that call right there. But if those two plays go differently, it's 30-27 with Georgia getting the ball back, as opposed to down 34-24 when Stetson gets that last drive of the first third quarter, and then he throws the interception on the first play of the fourth quarter. So ultimately, going forward and what this means for the Georgia quarterback position, one, Stetson Bennett, I know not everyone is happy with him right now. Stetson Bennett absolutely deserved to start that game. He earned the right to start that game with how he played against Arkansas, Auburn, and Tennessee. And right now, Arkansas might be the best win that Georgia has, just given the way they've played the past couple of weeks. So he to say that you should have been starting JT Daniels all along, that's just, I can't help you there. He'd earned the right to do that with how he'd played in past games. And you factor in JT Daniels wasn't healthy. He had a second knee procedure in January. He was not cleared for that Arkansas game. And I know a lot of people, might probably myself included at times, think that we know a lot about the game of football, but these guys are seeing Stetson Bennett, JT Daniels, Dwan Mathis, Carson Beck every day in practice. And if they believe that JT Daniels was the guy and the guy to put in and the guy to lead this Georgia offense, to get the most out of this offense, to beat Alabama, because that's what Georgia wanted to do on Saturday, I think they would have felt comfortable and okay with, hey, let's give ourselves the best chance to win. And this past Saturday, that was with Stetson Bennett. Will that be the best? Will Stetson Bennett be the best guy going forward? We're going to see how that plays out. They've got a bye week this week that I think is, and as I wrote this morning, it's very well timed for them, because one, playing Kentucky next week is not going to be an easy or necessarily fun game. They like to run the ball a lot. They have a very good pass defense. They are a physical team, as Kirby Smart has said over and over and over again. And that's not the type of team you want to play a week after playing Alabama. So having that bye week there, I think, is going to be a little bit better. And that is going to sort of help Georgia, I think, have an easier chance at getting an easier time against Kentucky, because I've always sort of believed that they were going to win that game. With JT Daniels, and I'll have a story on this Thursday morning, think back to the 2018 Florida game and sort of what had happened in the run-up to that game and where Georgia was with its quarterback situation going into that. The week before, so they had a bye week before playing Florida, but the week before that bye week, they played LSU. Jake Fromm had, to that point, played the worst game of his career against LSU. And Justin Fields had come in that LSU game. He had helped authored a touchdown drive there and showed his mobility a little bit. And that was certainly a dimension that he could have added to the Georgia offense. To that point in time, Jake Fromm had shown, hey, maybe he might not be the guy going forward. Maybe Justin Fields is the guy that can take this team to another level. But Jake Fromm was also the guy that took Georgia to a national title appearance, that won them the SEC, and had a lot of success for them. And you go into that Florida game, and I believe, and I've sort of heard rumblings about this as well, that Florida game going back was going to be very, very big in determining the future of the Georgia quarterback position. If Jake Fromm hadn't necessarily gone out and played all that well that day, there's a very real chance that Kirby could have put in Justin Fields and said, hey, Justin, you're the guy going forward. Jake, we appreciate all you did for us, but a loss to LSU, a loss to Florida, teams that you see as contemporaries in Georgia at that point probably even saw as themselves as being better, and Georgia couldn't get it done that day. So if Georgia had lost that game to Florida, you really wonder, does that completely open the door for Fields to step in and Kirby to say, Justin, you're a guy? What ended up happening was Jake played an excellent game against Florida that day. They were great on third down, as they always sort of seem to be. against the Todd Grantham defense. And that sort of from that point forward in that season, Jake Fromm was the guy. And I think from that point forward, Justin Fields knew I'm not going to be able to beat out Jake Fromm. And from there, the two have sort of gone their separate ways. Justin Fields, who takes the field for the first time this season on Friday for Ohio State, has become one of college football's best players. And Jake Fromm has become Jake Fromm, who is now a third-string quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. So I think that was a very big fork-in-the-road moment for Georgia in 2018. And so now I think we're sort of at a similar position here, though obviously JT Daniels and Stetson Bennett are, I think, poorer versions of Fromm and Fields. Bennett is obviously the Fromm guy. He's the incumbent. He's the guy who's been in the system. He's the guy who, yes, he's had some shaky performances, or in Bennett's case, really only one shaky performance. And he doesn't have the physical tools or physical upside that the other guy has. With JT Daniels, there's some inexperience factor in there. He is still sort of new to this Georgia offense, whereas I think you can all pretty clearly tell his Georgia teammates love Stetson Bennett. They love rooting for the guy. They love playing for the guy. Daniels, we don't know what that's sort of like. He's been working with the third team. He hasn't, as I sort of asked Kirby Smart today, when you're running that scout team, that third team, you're not necessarily getting a ton of reps in the Georgia offense. And because of that, he hasn't gotten a lot of first-team reps sort of since the season started. And that's been going to Bennett. And this week, though, with there being no opponent, it opens the door for Georgia to take deeper looks at some guys, specifically that quarterback position, I imagine, during practice this week. JT Daniels and DeJuan Mathis, those are guys who are going to get reps with the first team, and they're going to see what they're capable of doing. So, and Jay Bolton, I'm not comparing JT to Justin. I'm in no way doing that. I'm just saying the situation between 2018 and 2020. So with JT, it's do we see him on the field? What does he look like in game action? Because he hasn't played since the very first game of the 2019 season, and you have to wonder how healthy his knee is. And from that point, the health thing, it's interesting in the sense that, you know, I think maybe we weren't always glued in on how healthy JT was, and maybe we still don't know how healthy he is. So going forward, the decision lies at Kirby Smart, and I can tell by reading your comments that just about everyone thinks it's time to move on from Stetson. I don't necessarily know if that's the case. I think Stetson, much like he was entitled to start Alabama, I don't think that one bad game against the best team you're going to play all season means you're gone forever. Stetson, again, that was the third career start for him. He is still a young player, a player who is getting better, who will get better as he gets more game reps. And Kentucky's going to be a good test. I know Florida's defense stinks, but if he wins that game, that's a big-time game. So Stetson Bennett is allowed to get better. I think that's something that, you know, maybe not everyone is willing to give him the benefit of the doubt on. But if he does, that still opens some things, because there were some good throws and some positive things done on Saturday. Georgia did have a 24-20 lead in the third quarter of that game, and Stetson Bennett was a key reason for that. He's certainly more athletic than JT Daniels and is capable of doing stuff with his legs and making and creating plays with his legs. You saw that in the Auburn game when the first third down, he sort of spun out of the pocket and hit Keiris Jackson downfield. So Bennett, and I'll be really interested, I think he probably does still start against Kentucky, but I'll be interested to see, does he play every rep? Does he get every significant game rep? Is maybe that Kentucky game a chance to start sort of inserting Daniels into the lineup? There's also the fact that you win the Kentucky game and you win the Florida game. The 4 games after that, well, yes, they are still SEC games and tricky affairs, and you only have to look back to South Carolina a season ago. I think those last 4 games going into the Alabama game are probably better games to sort of, for Daniels to get his feet wet, to sort of get in and get accustomed. Whereas I think these next 2 games for Georgia are the 2 hardest remaining ones on their schedule. And these are the 2, in my opinion, best teams in the SEC East. And to get a chance to play Alabama again, you have to make sure that you beat those teams. So we'll sort of see where things go there. I'll be very interested to see what happens with JT Daniels and how much he plays, if he plays, what do practice over the next couple of weeks look like for him. So it'll be interesting to see both how Stetson, I think, bounces back from this game, because I believe that he can. And he's shown enough against teams like Tennessee and Auburn that he's certainly capable of playing at a big-time level. The biggest question is, and I've written this several times, do you believe that Stetson just had a bad game, which he certainly did, and he will tell you, or do you believe that the one game was definitive proof that he is not good enough to beat Alabama? And if you think the answer to that is the latter, then you're going to have to turn to JT Daniels. And if you believe it's the former, maybe you stick with Stetson Bennett a little bit longer. I will add that Stetson Bennett wouldn't be the starter if Jamie Newman opted out. And BA and I had sort of talked about this today. I don't believe that we'll ever know why, the real reason why Jamie Newman chose to opt out. But I also believe Jamie Newman was going to be the starter if he was the quarterback. And to be honest, with the way Georgia's defense played on Saturday, especially in the second half, I don't know, and I don't think Jamie Newman beats that Alabama team. So I don't even know if JT Daniels in his current state beats that Alabama team on Saturday. Alabama and I talked about this a little bit in the story I wrote, Alabama's second half, Nakobe Dean gets a sack on third down on their first drive to force them to punt. The next 4 drives after that went touchdown, 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 end of game. And it was sort of a thing where I don't want to say the Georgia defense, was out-conditioned or out of shape or anything like that, but the Georgia defense over the course of the game, I just think, could not keep up with the horses that Alabama had, specifically those 2 wide receivers on the outside. In sort of talking with players and Kirby Smart today, they do think some of the stuff is fixable. I know the Jalen Waddle 90-yard touchdown, while yes, Tyson Campbell fell down, the reason he was even sort of in a position like that is just because of a miscommunication error between himself and Tyreek Stevenson. So some of the stuff I do think is fixable with this Georgia defense. But at the end of the day, and given, again, the comment section here, it comes down to offense. Offense is going to have to win you games at this college level. Unless a rule change comes, you are ultimately going to have to now clearly win games with your offense. Your defense might be able to get you a few stops, but when you are playing against guys like Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Clemson has guys like, not this year, obviously, Justin Ross, but Amari Rodgers is very good, Frank Lasden, Joe Nada. Ohio State, who just signed 3 studs in their past recruiting class and has a guy like Garrett Wilson as well. These teams all have elite wide receivers, and I think Georgia has promising wide receivers. George Pickens, Jermaine Burton. I think you like what you've seen out of Kyrus Jackson this far. Dominic Blaylock gets healthy again. The Georgia's offense, 1, is getting there, and 2, I think the big thing that you've seen so far this season yes, this offense has improved from where it was a season ago, which makes you just look back to that 2019 offense and just really shake your head at how bad it really was. Just seeing this year how with largely the same players, Todd Monken has, in my opinion, done a lot for this Georgia offense that just could not, for whatever reason, been done there. So we'll sort of see where things go. The bye week, again, I think it comes at a really opportune time for Georgia, getting a week to rest up, coming off that Alabama game, figure some things out on the offensive side of the ball, and then prepare for a physical Kentucky team, which is not an easy game. You saw it last year. That game was tied 0-0 at halftime. I know the weather was bad, but it's bad for Kentucky too. So we'll sort of see where things go there. Again, comment sections and whatnot, I'm not going to go into trashing Stetson Bennett like a lot of people seem to be. He had a bad game. He'll tell you he had a bad game. But, again, I don't think anyone ever really wanted Stetson to be the Georgia. If Georgia fans had their way, Stetson Bennett wouldn't have been the quarterback. And if that were the case, Georgia might have lost one of those first 2 games. So, even before Alabama. So we'll sort of open it up for comments and questions to sort of see where we're going to go with this over the last 10 minutes. So, let's see. Yeah, Philip Beck brings up, Georgia's defense being gassed, a little tired on Saturday. I think that certainly sort of factored into it. And really even Georgia in the early parts of that third quarter coming out of halftime, they got the ball first. They couldn't score. They get a stop. They force an Alabama punt. That drive, they come out, can't score. They have to punt again. And Jalen Waddle goes and scores his touchdown. There was a real swing there where Georgia had a chance for it to be a 31-17 game when Alabama first got the ball in the second half. And the fact that it was a 24-20 game, I think, was a real win for the Crimson Tide, and just that they were able to keep it close and still able to run the ball and do some of the things that they did in the second half to where they were able to effectively still play their game and not have to play a way that Georgia wanted them to. Keith Finley, I'll defend Tyson Campbell a little bit on there. You go back and watch. Waddle is pretty clearly supposed to be Tyreek Stevenson's man, and at the very last second, Stevenson sort of calls for a switch, and Tyson Campbell has to readjust and pick up on the fly, and Jalen Waddle is not the type of player you can do that with. You have to know before he starts and gets a head start who is going to be defending him at all times, because he is one of the fastest players in college football, and in my opinion, one of the as great as wide receivers as Alabama had over years. I think from his traits, from his tools, I think I would take him over everyone since Julio Jones. So I've seen a couple questions about Carson Beck to sort of give you an idea of where he is. He did not travel this past weekend, and Georgia traditionally, they only bring 3 quarterbacks on the road. That's what they did this past week. They brought Dwan Mathis and JT Daniels. I think that sort of establishes where Beck is on the pecking order right now. Yeah, John Williams Adams brings up, you turn it over 3 times. You couldn't really get a stop in the second half. While, in my view, the biggest difference was how Mac Jones played versus how Stetson played. Ultimately, football, again, it's a team sport, and it's not always all on the quarterback there. I know you want to point to past Alabama games. The reason Georgia lost in 2018 is because of the defense. Jake Fromm threw for 300 yards that day, 3 touchdowns. The reason that 2018 loss, it wasn't on the offense, it wasn't on the quarterback. So it's a lot of, moving. I just think that one game is maybe a tough example of that. Kathy Monroe and PD Wheatstraw bring up DJ Daniel. Kirby Smart today said he had an ankle injury and he'd been rehabbing, working to get that back. And I think against this Alabama defense, if you're compromised in any sort of way, that's not necessarily a position you want to find yourself in, especially when you're having to defend the likes of Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. He is hoping to get back Daniel for the Kentucky game, get him closer to 100%, and have him keep doing the things that he's doing. Adam Anderson played in that game on Saturday, so he obviously didn't have the impact he had in recent games, but he was out there on the field. So let's see, questions. Let's see. Not a lot of questions. Just a lot of trashing of quarterbacks right now. So Michael Porter asked, is Monty Rice okay? Monty Rice, there was some concern about him going into the game. He had a boot on his foot, but he did end up playing out there. He was out there. I think a guy like him, this bye week really helps to where he doesn't have to rush back out there to play against Kentucky. He gets some time to heal up. But the fact that he was out there playing against Alabama in a regular season game, I might add, I think is a good sign for him and his long-term health. And while Quay Walker is not Monty Rice, Quay Walker is still, I think, a very good player for this Georgia defense. And I have a story coming on to Kobe Dean tomorrow as well. I know Monty is such an important piece to this Georgia defense, and he's been playing excellent. But there's still some really good depth there at that inside linebacker position. And so we'll sort of see where things go there. Daniel Aldrich asked, do I see Georgia winning out? Georgia should win every game on the rest of its regular season schedule. They are better than Kentucky. I think they are better than this Florida team. And this Florida team, with all the COVID stuff going on right now, they're not practicing. They're not out there on the field. They're not doing anything. They're not allowed to work out. All football activities are suspended. So it's not like they're resting up and adding wrinkles to their game plans and putting them in practice. They can't do anything right now. Georgia's at least getting to practice this week. They're getting to do stuff. And I believe they have 31 positive tests among the athletes on the team. It's a real concern. It'll be real interesting to sort of see what this Florida team, if and when we see them again, what they look like, just given the concerns they had on the defensive side of the ball. And then from there, how they are able to get better after that. Because they got shredded against Texas A&M, and you wonder what they're sort of look like from there. And then I think Georgia's 4 games after that, Missouri, Mississippi State, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. Georgia should win those. I think that South Carolina game might be interesting. I think that's an improving team. I would not be surprised if they go into LSU and win there this weekend. So to answer Michael's question, I do think Georgia will see Alabama again in the SEC championship game. I don't think Alabama is going to lose to anyone on the rest of their schedule until the SEC championship game. So we'll I think you hope, if you're a Georgia fan, you're hoping to see them again. And, for 40 minutes, Georgia went toe-to-toe and had a lead on Alabama. It's just they got to figure out and find a way to finish, whether that be with Stetson Bennett at quarterback or JT Daniels, whoever it is. So PD Whitestripe asked about what are your thoughts about Alabama proving you don't necessarily need a dual-threat quarterback to be effective in today's game. I think there's a misconception out there about dual threat quarterbacks, about guys running around and how you can win. Joe Burrow was not a dual threat quarterback. Trevor Lawrence, I think largely is not a dual threat quarterback. But what they are able to do is when they absolutely need to, they're athletic enough to make plays with their feet. They're not like the Johnny Manziel types or the guy, or even a Jalen Hurts type, a guy that is going to use his legs as a way to move the ball. Those guys are going to use their legs to get themselves out of trouble and put themselves in more advantageous situations. Mac Jones, I don't even know if he can do that, but with how he played on Saturday and the weapons and skill players he has around them, I think that mitigates a lot of the lack of athleticism that Jones has. So, Jacob O'Neill brings up Clemson, Alabama look right now pretty clearly the top 2 teams in the country, and Ohio State gets back on the field this weekend. We'll sort of see where they go and how they end up looking. So, Caleb Janney asks, what is the likelihood anyone other than Stetson starts against Kentucky? I would say right now at this moment, with only one practice happening, with only sort of one set of intel after this Alabama game, I would probably say low. But, maybe JT Daniels really turns it on in practice and starts looking better and better as he gets more first-team reps. And maybe this time next week when we're chatting again, maybe it's a different story in a different situation. But I still right now think probably against Kentucky, you're probably going to see Stetson Bennett once again. John Lewis, I think this is a fair point up. I once again, Nick Saban got the better of Kirby Smart in the second half of the game. I know there was a lot about Saban in the foreground of that game with his COVID test and his negative test, but I thought Saban came out, and Steve Sarkisian as well. I think they came out, had a really good game plan for Georgia. They consistently found ways to get guys like Waddle and Devontae Smith matched up in advantageous situations to put them in a possibility where they can make big plays. And so from there, we'll sort of see what adjustments Kirby has. I do think Kirby is still a top 5 coach in college football, but Saban has done very well against Kirby. That's an undeniable fact right now. Let's see. Yeah, Bobby Jones asked, does Georgia go more run-heavy next time against Alabama? Georgia ran the ball successfully, and after Alabama took the lead 27-24 with 4 minutes to go in the third quarter when it was still very much a game Georgia only called 3 designed run plays for the remainder of that game. You have to like how Georgia's offensive line played. I thought they looked much improved from what you saw against Tennessee. And it'll be interesting to see going forward how this offensive line looks week to week. I think you're still sort of looking for the consistency there, but you liked what you saw out of Zamir White. You like, once again, what you saw out of Kendall Milton. He looks like he's just a player who's getting better and better every week. And, he's someone who maybe the second time these two teams meet, he emerges as a real difference maker there. And James Cook had his best game as a Bulldog, in my opinion. So there were, as down as everyone clearly is on the quarterback situation right now, there were some positives I think that you saw on the offensive side of the ball against Alabama on Saturday. And that's perhaps something that should be a little bit encouraging going forward. So, yeah, Norman Mills says Kendall Milton needs more reps. I will say Kenny McIntosh, he dinged up his knee. Kirby Smart wasn't sure if it was on the opening kickoff return or it was on an early carry he had for there, but that's not expected to be a significant injury. I expect him back on the field against Kentucky. So, let's see. Yeah, Ty Samuel, O-line looked really good. Noah Sheldon, ultimately, yeah, I probably agree with this point. If you want to win in today's college football, you need a quarterback who can make plays for you. And is JT Daniels that guy? We don't know yet. Stetson Bennett showed against Alabama on Saturday in Tuscaloosa that he couldn't necessarily get it done, especially in the second half. But I think that larger point of you just need really, in this day and age, it's so clear now. You need really good QB play. And I'm sure Alabama fans before the season, they'll tell you they wanted Bryce Young over Mac Jones. But, Mac Jones went out there. Mac Jones wasn't a superstar recruit. He wasn't a big-name guy. Obviously, he had a bigger profile than Stetson Bennett. But Mac Jones went out there and tore it up in a way Joe Burrow never did, Tua never did, Jalen Hurts never did, Baker Mayfield didn't do. So while, yes, JT has the higher theoretical ceiling, I think your team coaching staffs like Sark did with Mac Jones, and I think Todd Monken is going to be able to do here, are able to open some doors and open some things up for these quarterbacks. So we will we'll do one more question here before heading out. I actually really like this question from Al Broyles. Connor, do you think Stetson is experienced enough to check down on receivers? Seems like he is forcing balls sometimes into the covered number one receiver. Again, I think that's something that comes with game reps, with being in a situation like that where the first couple games, Georgia wasn't hurt by Stetson sort of doing that, by forcing the ball downfield and throwing it into a tighter window than he should have. But there have also been times, I think especially against Alabama, I know I've seen some of the screenshot doctors out there saying, oh, look at this guy on a 3rd and 10 who's 8 yards short of the first down and wide open. I do think that sort of is a thing that comes with experience and knowing and getting more acclimated to game speed of, all right, my first read's not there. I can check down and I know that I'm going to have him there. So I do think the point about being experienced enough, if he gets more reps, and based on the comment section tonight, that this crowd would not have it, but as he gets more comfortable sort of running this Georgia offense, maybe he does start to make some of those check down throws that open things up for the rest of this offense. So really good question there for Al. That'll probably do it for us tonight. So tomorrow night for the Hedge with Jeff Sintel, we are going to have cover 4 on Thursday. That should be another spirited discussion. Hopefully Mike won't patronize me again. That's a joke. Friday night you get Mike Griffith, though maybe he might be taking some time off this week. And then obviously Monday through Friday, Dog Nation Daily. So hope everyone is having a great week. Enjoy the week off this weekend. I know we all thought it'd be Halloween, but a week off, a week away from football sounds like a good thing. So I hope everyone's having a good time and have a great weekend, everybody.